It is How to Lose a Planet, the Afrofuture epic. Alright, we're starting chapter 3, Kato, Starfighting. During his final day in prison, Kato was rubbing the spot on his stomach where Sierra had shot him. The wound was about a week old and improving. A few days ago, it hurt like he'd been burned by an iron. Now it felt like rug burn. The fingertips of his left hand lay against the mirror above the sink in his segregation cell. He waited for a horizontal line of blue light to appear at the mirror's top edge and slide down the glass. The light would indicate that the mirror had begun scanning him and gathering his biological data. "Scan me, you space-age slave wage," Kato said. Inmates weren't required to submit to mirror scans, but doing so once a day reduced their sentence by 5 minutes each time. If an inmate submitted their biological data to the prison's database each day for a year, he would earn a little more than an extra day of freedom. Despite only needing to say "scan" to activate the mirror, sometimes Kato felt inspired to improvise. "I said, scan me, you black market organ dealer." He held his 5 fingers still in the cold glass. No blue light appeared. He shifted his weight, leaning from his right foot to his left, waiting for the mirror to activate. He had heard that the prison had received funding for toilets that would analyze the inmates' waste. He tried to conceive the usefulness of his stool, the treasure in his shit. But he failed. After giving up, instead of feeling dim-witted, he felt old, like the 7 moons were passing him by. "Scan me." He looked at his reflection and thought he lost too much weight. The same strong eyebrows, broad nose splayed out into a triangle and full mouth. The same shade of deep brown skin except for the spot of dark red on his bottom lip. The same wide and unblemished jaw except for the patches of stubble. But there were more lines under a pair of eyes that looked bigger, rounder, and sadder. And he had smaller cheeks, almost like he was sucking them in. He pursed his lips at his messy, inch-high hair and wondered when a guard would take him to the barber. "Scan, you manipulative journalist." After completing its scan, the mirror would flash "report" on the glass, inviting the inmate to communicate anything. He suspected this feature was a second attempt at a psychological probe by way of interrogation. The first attempt was the initial invitation to touch the mirror, the opening bid that gauged how deeply an inmate ached for freedom. The flashing report on the glass inviting him to interact with the mirror felt sinister. Already, the mirror's reflection was where the slight twist and pulls of his facial muscles would speak a sign language and reveal more than his words ever would. But because the scan was never registered as complete until the inmate communicated a thought, he typically raised the middle finger and said, "The moon's Tuskegee," or hinted at some other human experimentation anecdote that felt relevant. Occasionally, he would reveal a random truth. "I miss cooking," or discuss his crime. "Maybe I refused to kill because I was afraid I'd like it." The mirror still hadn't worked. "Guard!" He pulled his hand from the mirror and leaned his face into the square, palm-sized window fixed into the iron door to his left and set in the same wall as the mirror. "Guard!" he said again, rubbing his stomach, which had been both bruised and nauseated for days, feeling like a cup of milk left to spoil in the sun. "Guard! Who's on duty?" He started to wonder if he was alone, if the whole prison had been emptied and he'd been forgotten. "Calm down," he said to himself. He glimpsed the cinder block walls with a side-to-side gaze. This ain't no tomb. After a few seconds, he gave up calling for a guard and lay face down on his cot, groaning from the bruise but hoping the pressure from the mattress would suppress his nausea. The cot smelled like hot tires. He remembered being disgusted by the odor when he first came to prison. Now he was indifferent. An upside to his nausea was that it made sleeping a challenge. Nightmares about the designer drug that Lacey Simmons had spoken of and its addicts exhibiting the bizarre side effect of supernatural strength had haunted him. He would awaken from the nightmares shaken by anxiety, calming his fears with slow, deep breaths and curling into himself under the cover of night and his wool blanket. In the nightmares, the eyes of the drug users went unseen, bunkered in shadows. Their bodies swelled, translucent skin showing muscle and threatening to tear, and their oversized hands hung low, each finger caked in blood and crooked and dry like a dead tree's branch. He assumed the nightmares came because an overdose killed his brother, Amare, but he also wondered if the inkheads had access to the drug.